Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Unfuck Your Money Show. I'm your host, Nadine Zamot, somatic healing practitioner and money coach. I've got a little bit of a surprise for you here today. I mean, probably saw your name in the title. Not much of a surprise, but anyway, we've got Dr. Val Rytova with us today, and Dr. Val is a behavioral neuroscientist. Oh my goodness. We're going to be talking about our relationship with money and how it impacts our brain, our DNA. And we're going to talk about a lot of things. I've got a long list of questions for Dr. Val, and I am excited to get started. And before we dive in, hi, welcome. Let's talk about who you are, what turns you on in life. You just mentioned kite surfing a minute ago, and a bunch of other things. Dr. Val also lives in my beloved Melbourne. Melbourne is mine, even though I don't live in it anymore. But it's my home. So, tell us a little bit more about yourself, what turns you on in life, and yeah, whatever you want to share as an introduction.
Oh, thank you, Nadine. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really thrilled to be here today on a rainy Melbourne day, your Melbourne
My
day.
Melbourne, yeah.
I'm not surprised you don't live here anymore, but
No.
yeah, no, I'm just really grateful to be here. Thanks for having me. I can't wait to get into it. But to say a little bit about me, look, I from the start of it all, I was born in Russia and raised in Montreal. So I immigrated to Montreal with my mom, single mom at age
hmm
11, being an
hmm
only child. So, that has shaped my relationship to money and relationship to other things too.
Of course, yeah.
Immigration is a thing. It really is a process that one
Yeah.
goes through. And then subsequently I immigrated to Australia to do a PhD in my 20s. And I've been here for 12 years now. It's like, can't believe I've been here for 12 years, but I've
Yeah,
been in
Melbourne does
Melbourne
that
12
to
years.
you. It sweeps you off
Well,
your feet, doesn't it?
it
It's like
really,
I was messaging you, I was like, 20 years? Have I? Oh my God, I moved to Melbourne 20 years ago. How did that happen? I get it.
it is really wild. So yeah, I guess I've lived here for the majority of my life. Like this has been my
Mhm.
base more than any other place, really. Because if you think about it, we're talking numbers, but yeah, for 10, 11 years, I lived in Russia. Then until I was 20, only 9 years, I lived in Montreal. And then I kind of
Yeah.
did some traveling and then I came here.
Yeah,
And
that's
this
the
has been my
longest.
base for the longest time,
hmm
which is, anyway,
Yeah.
it's mind blowing. I mean, what is time, right? Like on a
You
behavioral
tell
level.
me. You're here to tell us this. I don't ask me about time. I haven't figured it out. I thought you did.
Well, I mean, it's all about perception, and
Yeah.
the brain perceives time in different ways. Yeah, normally we, as human beings, we perceive time in a linear fashion, like
hmm
yesterday, now, and tomorrow. But that's not really the reality of time. The reality of time is it's all happening at once. But our human ways, or our human brain, I think, maybe
hmm
eases us into what our human capacity can actually fathom, which is a linear timeline. Yeah, so
Oh,
that's why you can perceive like 20 years and like, oh, that was like a
like
millisecond, or it's
this.
like,
Yeah.
how long was that? Was that a second or was that an eternity? That's what the brain does with time.
Yeah, I shared this story on my podcast before. I'm going to share it again here because it cracks me up. I'm sure it'll crack you up. But 3 years ago, when I turned 40, on the months leading up to my 40th birthday, I would wake up in the middle of the night and go find my calculator and actually try to subtract my date of birth, like my year of birth from the year, because I couldn't believe I'm 40. I'm like, what the hell? How did that happen? I feel like I just turned 26. Like, how am I 40? It really, like, really fucked with me. Like, no, I'm
Yes.
not like, oh, aging. No, it really was like the time thing. It's like, what the hell? I went to university 20 years ago. 20? How? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like that. Time is a perception, and the way, look, although I'm not a behavioral scientist that's based my career around time, but I could tell you
Mhm.
that our brain's perception of time is skewed.
Yeah.
And you can notice it in simpler things like meditation, when you're really present, focusing on the details of life. 3 minutes could seem like 30 minutes. You know, when you're trying to meditate for like 10 minutes because it's good for your brain, after 3 minutes, you're like, that was fucking hours. How long do I have to do this for?
Oh man. So I am very interested in chatting about so many things, as I mentioned. One of them is how our environment, including our financial and socio-economical environment, all of it, impacts us at a level of our nervous system and our DNA, and how can trauma impact our DNA and how on the way our brain works. What can you tell us about this? Was this your thesis for your PhD?
Brilliant. No,
Can you summarize your thesis for us, please? Thanks.
it actually wasn't. My PhD was on the way that I'm like, wow, that was years ago. Let me remember what that was. What was my PhD? I know it was behavioral neuroscience, but what exactly? I'm kidding. It was actually on the way that our brain processes anxiety and fear-related behavior as well as social behavior.
Gotcha.
Right? Which is like
Okay.
a mixture, but it's really behavior-based. But look, everything that you've just asked me, I'm now very, very passionate about. So I've definitely done my research in that area, and that's where my expertise lies now. So let's talk about how our environment shapes us, our brain, nervous system, and our DNA. All right. So first thing first, I want to bring forth the concept of epigenetics because that is, in fact, what we're talking about.
Okay.
All right. So for our listeners who have never heard this term before, epigenetics is the altered expression of your DNA without actually changing the thing itself. So it is how our DNA is expressed according to our environment.
Okay.
And environment here is the key word because environment and the differential environment you may be placed in or intentionally place yourself in is what causes this differential expression of DNA.
So that's very interesting because we both started this conversation by emphasizing the impacts of immigration, right? Like I have traveled, like I've immigrated 5 times, right? So in maybe weaving into my question is also like the impact of moving around and all this. So yeah.
Yes, change of environment. You know, I always say it's 90% environment, 10% genetics. It's kind of my staple, I don't know, slogan at this point, if you will. But it really, you know, from my career, which is I've also calculated that recently, which is like, you know, almost 20 years as a scientist. I mean, I don't know how that, but yeah. That seems to be the case. So genetics only plays a very little part in how you experience life. Your environment is the major factor player here. So let's talk about DNA first, right? DNA is your genetic code. You know, it's a double-stranded helix, although that's debatable. Some people, you know, there's all these theories saying that, you know, there's 3 strands or whatever, or, you know, aliens fuck with it. Now we have a 3rd strand. From last I saw under a microscope, but you know, DNA has got 2 strands.
Okay,
Last I
that's
checked,
the
it's got
latest.
2 strands.
The latest.
Yeah,
Dr. Val checked.
Yeah,
You'll let us know if it changes. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm fascinated. By the way, I'm not discrediting.
Oh,
As a
I know.
scientist, I'm like open to all of it. I'm like, let's explore, you know? And I'm also very conscious that the science that we know today, 20 years from now, may be like obsolete.
Yes.
Just like nonsense.
I believe that too. Everything I studied 20 years ago now is like being debunked.
Right?
Like,
Yeah,
no,
exactly. Exactly. But our genetic code, we get it from mom and dad, you know, a strand from mom, a strand from dad. And that gives us, you know, our physical appearance. Like we do kind of look like our parents or at least grandparents, you know, there is a resemblance there most of the time. And then so some parts of your DNA are actually clumped up together and inaccessible to the transcription machinery. Okay, so that's a mouthful. But what I mean by that is those parts of your DNA will never actually become a protein. They'll never get expressed. They'll never turn into anything viable. No, like nothing. So some people call it dead DNA because it's so tightly clumped up, just like nothing can access it. All right. And depending on your environment, that clumped up DNA can open up itself up and be expressed
Very
or
interesting.
not.
Okay.
So an example of such thing are stress-related genes. So for example, if you find yourself in a stressful environment, especially after during prolonged periods of time,
Like traumatizing experience,
exactly,
but
trauma.
like a longer, like like they call it small t trauma, but like repetitive small t trauma. Is that what you're saying? Like a long period of time being under stress and anxiety, or are we talking about a sudden big T trauma kind of thing? Well, it's
I'm
kind of the
talking,
same. I don't really believe in the big T, small t categorization, but I'm just trying to like understand.
sure, sure. Let's talk about, let's say 3 weeks or longer.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
Makes
so a
sense. That makes
stressor
sense.
that's been there for 3 weeks or longer, whether it's,
Mm-hmm.
a toxic family dynamic or a uh, stressful workplace or some stressful relationship, if it's been happening for long, or something stressful that's been
Okay.
happening for longer than 3 weeks, let's
Mm-hmm.
just say that,
Okay.
then your DNA, your stress related genes will be easily accessible because they're really there for survival, so you need to access them. Okay,
Okay.
now if you place yourself in an environment without the stressors, and I don't know, you go and meditate in the Himalayas for 20 years. Okay, it doesn't have to be 20 years, by the way. It could be some period of time, right? But you take yourself out of the stressful environment, let's just say, in whatever shape or form, whatever your new physical environment is, it's not stressful anymore. The stress genes will start to get repressed. So they'll actually start to clump up the DNA
Mm-hmm.
itself and be no longer accessible. So what now will start to flourish is those genes, like for oxytocin, serotonin, all the happy molecules, they'll be more accessible, stuff like
Nice.
that. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Also genes for things like resilience, those structures. Yeah. Yeah. So the DNA is very responsive to our environment in that sense. Actually, at the DNA level, it moves, it either
Got
can clump
it.
up on itself or open up. That's just
Oh,
one
wow.
way it could happen. There are different epigenetic mechanisms which are kind of outside of the scope of this conversation, but I just described one of them. There's other ways. There's actually, methylation marks, like little tags that can be put onto certain
Mm-hmm.
genes within DNA to say, oh, don't express these genes under these conditions. So there's a multitude of ways under which that happens, like at a cellular level. But if you want to learn about that, you should come and do my course. But I'm not. I don't want to be here for the next 6 hours, so let's not.
Let's not. Yeah, let's not. Although I'm very interested. So for example, say someone has grown up with a lot of financial scarcity, okay, a lot of financial anxiety, a lot of financial scarcity. How might this change their brain chemistry, and what would this look like when it comes to managing their finances?
Yeah, perfect. So now we're getting into neuroplasticity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And neuroplasticity, again, I'll just, may sound like jargon to some people.
No, no,
It's a word that
it's a buzzword now,
it's a
please.
buzzword. Okay, all right,
It's
all
a
right. So
buzzword.
all right. Well, good. It's still the
You're
case.
still on Vogue, à la
Yay!
mode.
That's where I want to be. That's why I wear the shirt. But look, so neuroplasticity is the capacity of your brain to change itself or rewire itself according to new
Okay.
experiences, new environments, something new.
Okay.
So basically, if you've grown up in a scenario where your relationship to money is one of scarcity,
Yeah.
which I have in a way, I've got sort of both dynamics. I grew up in Russia, and none of it in a single mom household with not a lot of you know money.
Hmm.
Right? So what actually that kind of environment starts to shape your brain. And what I mean by that is, on a behavioral level, everything can be related to as a circuit, like an electrical circuit. In the
Okay.
same way, there are loops, circuits in your brain that underlie certain behaviors.
Okay.
Your relationship to money is one of such behaviors. So
Yeah.
it's a circuit in your brain. Okay. So if that circuit in your brain from a young age has been formulated or instilled and then reinforced as, hey, money is evil, or there's not a lot of money,
There's
or
not enough in the world, right? Yeah.
I'm bad with money, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
shit, or I'm born into poor, like whatever that like disempowering conversation, let's
Yep.
just say, is, that loop will run wild, especially, and then that's all you'll see. It kind of forms like a filter through which
Okay.
you see life,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the go-to loop or circuit,
Mm-hmm.
neuronal pathway in your brain around
Mm-hmm.
every time you're faced with even the thought of money.
So just to
Okay.
interrupt you for a second here, just so that me and the listeners understand. So this is pretty much like the neurobiology of a belief, pretty much.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. So there's exactly money belief. That's right. It
Yeah.
could be any belief, but within this,
The scope of this
conversation and our
conversation. Yeah, yeah,
interest,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's really our belief about money, our relationship to money, our sense of who we are around money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the
Okay.
money loop, the money
The money
circuit,
loop. Okay. Yep.
the money loop in our brain. And but the beautiful thing about neuroplasticity is that it can be rewired. It doesn't have to stay that way. If you
Mm,
don't want to rewire it, if you want to live in scarcity mindset, that's fine too. And or not that you don't want to, but sometimes you want to and you don't know how, there's that too. But the brain's a pretty lazy thing, okay? It's energy consuming, but it's very lazy. So once it's formed a circuit, and it's used that circuit multiple times, it really doesn't want to use any energy to form any new circuits, really.
hmm.
That's why, some habits are really hard to shift.
Are we fucked?
Yeah. No, no, we're not. We're not actually fucked. We're
Okay.
the neuroplasticity is what unfucks us and our brains.
Yep. Good.
This
Okay.
beautiful thing called neuroplasticity, which up until the 1900s was thought non-existent. So I guess up until the 1900s we were fucked. So if you and I had this conversation in another lifetime,
Right? If
maybe,
if if you believe, then you achieve what you believe. If you believe that you're fucked, then you're fucked. If you believe that you're not fucked and neuroplasticity is a thing, then you're not. I'm actually
exactly.
moving my face from the sun. But
Yeah,
you keep going. I can hear you. I
no
can hear
problem.
you. I'm with you. I'm following. Yep. So
Great,
we're not
great.
fucked.
No, we're not.
Okay.
You're not anyway. I'm not either, but yeah. Uh, but does that make sense? Like if
Yes.
that circuit can either run and run and run until you create a new neuronal pathway
And
for,
how do we do
some
that?
other relationship. Well, there are multiple ways to do that. I mean,
Hmm.
you're the money coach, so you unfuck people's brains in that
I
respect.
do.
But
Yeah, that's my thing.
yeah, I think that's how you do it. I mean, you probably better explaining it. What I'm going to say is there are different pathways to that.
Hmm.
People can EFT tap themselves into a new belief system about money. They can do a transformational personal development program that really like opens their brain up to new pathways of thinking. And then but this is the thing, right? So you can rewire your brain, but if you place yourself in the same environment that you had before,
Yeah.
that only relates to you as the old neuronal pathway about money, that's going
Yeah.
to be tricky. So I recommend
Okay.
I recommend altering your environment that's supportive of the new neuronal pathway of who you've become once you've shifted your money belief system.
So now
Yeah.
let's just simplify it.
Yes.
So I grew up in Jordan. I grew up with a lot of scarcity around me. Grew up in the 80s. There's wars, poverty, there was scarcity outside, inside the house, financial abuse, all this stuff. Okay. And say like I went to Australia when I was 23,
Mhm.
but that's all I was able to see because that was my reality.
Of course.
And that was my reality for until 2016 when I woke up. Literally, I was like,
Yeah.
hang on a second. Why is this my reality when everybody else can be rich? Like there was like a mismatch, right? But
Yeah.
then the thought is like, what if I decided, what if I didn't want to go to Australia? What if I wanted to stay in Jordan, right? Or what if, like the change of environment, like how does it
Mhm.
literally mean that we have to leave the house or the environment in which created the trauma? Or like, do we orient
Mm.
ourselves towards something else, like intentionally? Like,
Yes. Yeah,
so
yeah. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I get your train of thought. So it's actually it's a great question because up until a certain point I would have said, yeah, like, more effective is actually physically
Hmm.
changing your
Yeah,
environment and like,
yeah.
placing yourself in another situation, which is kind of what you've done, right? But now I'm like, well, now my beliefs about that have changed because ultimately we can access the internet now, and we can access, I think we can also on a
Yeah.
consciousness level we've evolved so we can tap into alternative belief systems just by ourselves. People have these epiphanies, as you say, they get awoken with, I mean, fuck really knows how, like different for different
Yeah.
people. I
It's weird,
on
right? Like
Yeah,
sometimes it's just something you see and you're like, "What?" And sometimes it's a big change. I have a lot of people, like, when I ask people what made you want to come and heal your money trauma now or work on your money stuff for real now, even though you've dabbled in it before, but what made you really want to invest in yourself and pay for a coach? A lot of, like, the answer is never the same. Sometimes it's like, I inherited a bunch of money, or I looked around me and decided I don't want to be I don't want to be myself. I want to access my potential. A lot of people are like, oh, I've decided to become a healer or a coach or a practitioner, and I don't want my money stuff to limit me, kind of thing. So
yeah, get
there's
in the way for
always like
sure.
a breakthrough moment that is very different for everyone, but it does
Yeah.
happen. Yeah.
And maybe that's the beauty of the human experience. So, look, on a neuroscientific level, I could say, b- something alters within your environment, or
Okay.
maybe within your internal environment too. Like,
Yeah.
most of the time, it is 90% our external environment
Oh,
that can
okay.
drive, alter things. But sometimes, I don't know, you could look at it from a spiritual perspective. Like, maybe your soul contract was that at this point in your life, you're really going to
Mm.
unfuck your money. So,
I
you
love
know,
that. Yeah, yeah.
I actually, I don't know, but that I find there's beauty in the human experience with respect to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be, again, you could be pushed into it based on circumstance and environment, or it could be a personal choice.
So from, like, I know that you kind of like cartoonized it from like the clumping. I like the visuals of like the clumping of the DNA and what opens up, blah blah blah. So now if you can please, like, um kind of use the same visual kind of imagination cartoons to tell us how things change on a genetic level when neuroplasticity is at play. Okay, say that I woke up and I was like, oh no, I don't want to live in scarcity. I don't want to live in a life where money is dictating my happiness. I want to be happy and I want to be abundant and I want to be wealthy. Okay,
Yes,
and then what
great.
happens?
Great. Yeah. So once you see that vision, okay,
Yeah.
or you've made that, you've got it in your, let's say, in your mind, right?
Hmm.
Because we are visual beings. It's great that you're asking me to actually, visually represent what I'm saying, because we're visual beings, and on top of that, what we see is actually only 10% raw data, 90% is brain generated. So that's why visualization is so powerful, because if you can
Yeah.
make your brain think or visualize something, well, you're 90% there, you
Right. Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
That's very
10% from it,
important.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
not, I
So,
mean, we want to hear it from a neuroscientist. I don't want to hear it from a random millionaire
oh,
online that can tell me this, right? Like, it's
mm,
what you did. No, I want to hear it from you. So I'm glad you said
yes,
that. But anyway, continue.
yes. Yeah, yeah, no, literally, like on a neuroscientific brain level, what you're witnessing is 10% raw data, 90% re, brain
Reenactment,
generation
like,
from mostly from
yeah.
from the past.
Mm-hmm.
But once you see something or are awaken to the possibility of something else, whether you see it in someone else or whether somehow your mind came up with it, fuck knows where, you've just, like, as you said, you woke up, you're like, wow, I can see this vision of another way of relating to money and who I am in this world.
Yeah.
Okay, great. The moment that happens, that's a new neural pathway. So a new loop. forming in your brain. Against the
God.
odds, mind you, against the odds, right? Because the brain has its go-to of scarcity. I'm shit.
Yeah.
This is shit. We're all
Da-da-da-da.
fucked.
Yep.
To,
Yep.
that's been running for ages,
Me too.
and the
Yep.
brain really mostly wants to go to that one because the brain's lazy, doesn't want to
Yeah.
create new things, but somehow it's created this new loop because
Okay.
whether you saw something or you got awoke to something, we'll leave that up to the mystery of life.
Yeah.
But, a new neuronal pathway has now been formed.
Okay.
So now you've got the option, so the choice to, use the old or the new, because now you've got both. Now, it's easier to use the old neuronal pathway. That's the way the brain works. But you can also train yourself to use the new loop, okay? And you can do that through habit. That's how you strengthen a loop, really. I mean, it's boring, but it is through habit, okay?
Yeah.
And
It's not
there's no
glamorous,
time.
but it's chop wood, carry water.
Yeah, it really is like that. And the thing is, I can't tell you how long. So, the whole 21 days to
Oh no.
reprogram your brain. Fuck
Yeah.
no, that's not what actually happens. No. You know what? It's going to take however the fuck long it takes.
Yeah, I know.
And for different people, it's different. That's the other thing with it. Like for some people, it may take 20, where the 21-day thing came from a plastic surgery. Yeah,
Does
this
it did it oh
plastics.
really?
Yeah, it was a plastic surgeon who, like, kind of in his observation, when he did facial plastic reconstruction on people, it took them about
Uh-huh.
21 days to get used to their new face.
Yeah.
But I'm like, wow, that's been really that's been overly used in contexts where it really shouldn't, because that's not the
It's
case
just like
with other things.
sometimes you hear something and it becomes like a fact. And yeah, that's so okay. So 21 days is a myth.
Yeah, let's
And
debunk that one.
so
Yeah.
I love that you said that because a lot of times what happens is that a lot of times one of the reasons people come and work with me, I was mentioning what happens, what's that click. One of the reasons, especially in the past year, is that they enrolled in coaching programs that promised them the moon. Just rewire your nervous system and you're going to make blah, blah, blah K in blah, blah, blah days, or you're going to rewire this in 21 days, blah, blah, blah. And it didn't work for them. So what it
Mm,
created instead was a loop of self-doubt and debt. But
yes.
what really is happening underneath that is shame. So it's a
Mm,
common theme that I see around money, that shame.
mm,
Shame from having even like less money than others, shame from not making X amount of money a month, or shame that you've joined a program with a bunch of people and it worked for them and didn't work for you, or the opposite. Like I have people that come and work with me because they have shame from having money, whereas some people don't, right? Or debt shame and all that stuff. So shame is such a common theme. And from a neuroscience perspective, how do you see shame coming about, and how can we use neuroscience to modify that thought pattern or the shame loop?
That's great. It's a great question. I kind of haven't thought about that one, but let's have a look. So,
Take your
the
time.
experience of shame, it could be, what are some of the other emotions associated with shame in your experience? Would it be like guilt, shame, doubt? Like, let's talk about or are they all different according to you?
So, underneath shame, what we usually find is anger,
Mm,
sadness,
mm,
disgust,
yes.
sometimes joy, even like we feel joy and we feel ashamed, like that example of
So,
like growing up
yeah.
with a lot of money while everybody else is suffering, that
Yes.
excitement or joy there's underneath it. So, usually there's
Yes.
like sadness, there's grief, anger, disgust. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I find.
Okay. Okay, great. So then, I mean, not great, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm
I
with you
see.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
We're
I see what
following
you're
me. Yeah.
saying. Yeah. So there will be, yes, a neuronal pathway for shame, and
Mhm.
that involves a bunch of brain areas talking together to actually express that as an emotion. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, it would be in your emotional brain centers, which is the amygdala, hippocampus, all those kind of things
Mhm.
that you've probably heard about before, and the chemicals that go with it. So likely a down regulation of the happy ones, the
Yeah.
serotonin and all that, and the motivational ones like no reward. or maybe there would be reward. Maybe some people get off on shame. I don't know. It depends on the person. But there's, let's say, the neural chemicals and the neural pathways associated with that as a behavior. Okay. Again, they will be strengthened if they have been used a lot. So if that, especially from a young age to later, you've used that one, well, that's the main one.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, that's when, no matter the environment, then, right? Sometimes at the start, it's like you can, like the money people, the people that win the lottery, right?
Yeah, they're
Like,
still,
I know it's like, right? They're still in, like, their brain's still using that same loop of shame and guilt or whatever. Like,
or
they're still living.
overspending, and it goes all of a sudden. Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of stays. Now, what were we talking about? So how does that manifest itself on a brain level, and then what?
I was asking, like, how do we use neuroscience to modify that loop?
Yes. Okay, great. So, well, again, there are multiples. They can come and see you and retrain their brain or create new neural pathways. They can, the people that want to alter that kind of shame loop. I mean, you would probably have to apply it to other areas of your life as well, not just money, because I see life as a whole. Our
Of
relationship
course,
to
how you
money is
do one
often,
thing is, I mean, I tell people, show me how you do your dishes, and I can tell you how you money. It's all,
right?
it's coming from
Well,
the same place. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we're aligned, because that's kind of what comes to mind as well. Is you would have to instill a new behavioral pattern, a new
Okay.
loop, and then live it in different areas of your life, and hopefully, or not hopefully, but hopefully your environment will start to see you as this new version of yourself, so then they can start to relate to you as that. Sometimes it's a little hard, but you can also, you people, well, you can place yourself in an environment, actually say it to people, like, listen, I've been like that, this is my view now, so here we go, I want you to relate to me as that. I mean, that's a pretty direct way of
Yeah, it's pretty
altering your
direct.
environment, or
Yeah.
you're kind of requesting people to help you in your metamorphosis or
Yeah.
transformation, right? Like, you can be
Mm.
direct like that too, I find, but there's different ways for it. I remember when, like, I had this thing. I'm into all sorts of things, right? Like, because now I did this numerology course with my doula. The chick that was my doula, she's a master numer, she's a whiz. And I was like, yeah, while I was on maternity leave, I'm like, I'm going to do the numerology course with you, right? And it's all about numbers and how there's a certain energy behind numbers. And we kind of talked about this before. But so now I can look back at my life through numerology and the energy of each year. And funnily enough, the year that was like the good money year for me, when I altered my belief and what the fuck I was doing with money, was
Yeah.
an 8 energy year for me, which is all about abundance and money. So I was like,
Yeah.
oh wow. So that's what I'm saying, is you can actually use multiple things. Like, you can pull on the astrological or numerological predictions around money for yourself. You can, and use that to rewire your brain, if you will.
You can do that.
Like, if
Okay.
that's what empowers you, do you know what I mean? If you're sitting there like, oh, this month or this today or this month or this year is an 8 year for me, great. I'm gonna fucking roll with it, and I'm gonna make money, right? But then what you're doing is rewiring your brain. It's kind of a placebo effect as well as a real energy.
So affirmations work if you believe in them. Everything works if you believe in them.
Affirmations are really great for the brain, because the thing is, when you speak something into existence, the brain perceives that as even more real, and that's, it becomes,
Y'all be careful what you say out loud. Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, there's our subconscious beliefs and blah blah blah, things we don't know, but the things that, but you know what? Actually, a lot of people are not even attuned to or aware of what comes out of their mouth as well. Like, we think we know, and then if you look at, sometimes I'll listen to the podcast and I'm like, wow, really? Okay, yeah,
Really? I would imagine everything you'd say is pretty cool and wise, no?
sure. But there's the jargon words, like, I like
Oh
to say,
gosh, yeah,
and I'm not aware of that. That's what
So
I'm saying. It's
yeah.
shit like that. We're not aware
Like
of what
yeah.
we're not really aware of what comes out of our mouths most of the time, and that
I
is pretty
see that
scary. But
force of habit.
it's the force of habit. But the brain does perceive whatever is spoken into reality more crystalline, if you will, more real.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
So I have been so interested. Like, I don't know where it came from, but I've become so interested in financial goals. Weird, right?
Mm.
And now I'm like thinking about like one of the biggest barriers for me and for the people that I help. One of the biggest barriers of goal setting is the fear of failure. And when our past lives has maybe conditioned us to orient towards negativity as opposed to positivity, like a series of heartbreaks or a series of like things
Yes.
not working out, and we're really really afraid of failure. And I just want to know, like, what's going on there from a neuroscience
Yeah.
perspective. What do
Yes.
we do about that?
Yeah. Very valid and very actual. So the
Hmm.
brain's a prediction machine. It'll predict based on the past. So what you
Yeah,
just said is actually the brain in its in its magnificence. Not really, but in its usual state, predicting more of what you've had. You
yeah,
know, so if you've had all these experiences, the brain's now looking for it. You know, I like to present some visual kind of little exercises in my courses where I actually show people like a visual thing, and their brain will make them read shit that's not there, but based on past experience.
I believe you. I've seen stuff like that. Yeah.
Right, like those, you know, those nerdy like,
Y-
oh, Paris in the spring. There's two thes there, but people only see one because
One,
they've
oh,
been
yeah.
conditioned. Yeah, stuff like that, or but that's an example of your brain's a prediction machine. Like it will predict from the past. It
Mm,
really will, and
okay.
yeah, that's why I think you know, critical thinkers are like the best thinker. Well, the best. I mean, the best is you know whether they think they are or not,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
some of the greatest thinkers of our time, it's like a new ideas pop in. It's because they're actually new novel ideas that haven't been generated from the past. That's why they're so fucking exciting, because it's like refreshing even for our brains to hear something. Of course we got to be ready
Yeah.
for it. I know that's the other thing of it, right? You got to meet people
Yeah.
where they're at.
I'm kind
But
of thinking, this is making me think something. I always thought, so this is no secret. This is no secret. I've got like my kryptonite is Instagram, not marketing so much, but Instagram itself is kind of, I don't think it's evil. It's just that I am not getting it. It's been 5 years now and I'm not getting it. And there's this like
right.
belief, like it's a loop, a belief, whatever it is in my mind
Yes.
that always says, like, had I not done 1,000,001 Instagram programs and did it organically the way that I wanted it to be done, it
Yeah.
wouldn't have become a problem.
Right. Okay. That's one
You
way
know
of
what I
you,
mean?
sure.
Like, I
That's one way
feel
of
like
looking at it. Yeah.
when we overthink something, I don't know how this came, and it's just that you kind of set yourself up to where success looks like one thing, and then you just put your blinders on in any other form of success that looks a little bit different to what was promised in the program or whatever it
Mm,
is
mm.
not a success. So this way you're orienting towards failure, and then it's like a negative feedback loop of like fail, 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 fail.
Yes, yes. That's the whole thing about social and cultural norms and beliefs. So I
Yeah.
know it is. So that actually reshapes our brain as well on many different
Yeah.
topics. But let's talk about money, right? That's what we're talking about. So our cultural beliefs about money and what we can do with that will form again loops in our brains or
Yes.
neuronal patterns in our brains that will be associated with negative reinforcement, so like a
Hmm.
certain feeling, and when you add a feeling or an emotion to something, it strengthens that neural pathway.
Yeah.
That's the basis of, like, you know, strong memories like PTSD. If you add an emotion to a memory,
Yeah.
bam, that memory is just so much easier accessible.
Yeah. It grows
So the
roots.
culture, yeah, the cultural things and the sort of what you get swept by, or the human condition even, right? Let's talk,
Mhm.
like, take
In
it to a
general,
larger
sure.
scale. You were born into the world and we're already fucking conditioned to be humans, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Had that conditioning not been there, well, fuck knows, we would have evolved into something else. but here we are, like swarmed. But yeah, so that forms a pathway in your brain that's now very, very strong because of the emotion attached to it, the negative connotation or context, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
And if there would have been a positive reinforcement, so in some cultures, you know, maybe in some cultures I don't know, but maybe in some cultures money is viewed differently.
Yeah, yeah, of course it is. Yeah. Many different many
Yeah,
cultures have. Okay, so like so two people. One was born in a culture where money was viewed as like shame, or like, don't, having it, you have to give it to the church,
yeah,
having
yeah,
it is
yeah.
greedy. And then a culture where you are, you're celebrated for having money, for working hard, for example,
Yeah.
and making money.
Yeah.
So these
Great.
two examples, so we can go from there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So the negative emotion will feed that belief, but the positive emotion will feed the alternative belief. So that
Yeah.
whatever emotion it is, your choice, positive or negative, will have a similar impact. It'll
Hmm.
reinforce the original thought
Okay.
or loop or neuronal pattern. I mean,
Yeah.
everything, thoughts, beliefs, they're like a thought is a neuronal pattern. A belief is that neuronal loop used 50,000 gazillion times. And then, well, your
Jesus.
reality is your reality.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Does that answer your question? We've kind of traversed.
Um, so I guess like I still have a question where
Mm,
so one has a positive reinforcement about money and the other one has a negative kind of loop about money, right?
mm,
So I guess the question is like, what happens when we're only just setting ourselves up with like the idea that failure is never going to happen, or
right.
failure is inevitable, like it's going to happen, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
like, I'm feeling like it's just the same kind of theme of like they're both beliefs. One belief is empowering and the other
Yes.
isn't. So
Yes.
we only
That
change a belief when it stops serving us, right?
not necessarily. I think on a subconscious level, we sometimes go to the same belief over and over and over again, even if it doesn't serve us,
No, but
and we don't know.
intentionally.
And intentionally, yeah. So when we're aware and like attuned to it. Okay, so that goes back to again, the brain using whichever is the easiest, so whichever it's used the most. That's
Okay.
what the brain will do. Like on a neuroscience level, it's pretty black and white. Like whatever you've been doing most of is what it'll do. If you want to do something different, you're gonna have to train it
Yeah. And
intentionally, consciously. Like that's
like
it's like
for
going.
real, like for real, like going to the gym. Like
It's like
I'm
going
I'm
to the
that's the
gym. It
same
really
getting.
is.
Okay,
It's
so
really like going to the gym. Fucking hate going to the gym. Yeah,
well, you kite surf, so
yeah,
same. Kind of, I would rather do something functional than go and do reps, to be honest. So,
I get it.
um, have you heard of glimmer hunts or glimmer exercises?
Yeah, I have. And it is what you're saying. Yeah, I have. That's the
It's one
answer.
of the tools that I use, and it's just something that I also practice myself. So I come from a background where joy feels very threatening to my nervous system. Like when I feel joy, I'm like, oh my God, something bad's gonna happen.
Mm,
And I've got low capacity for, I laugh, it's not funny. I've
mm,
got low capacity for goodness, because that's how I, whatever.
mm.
And one of the things that helps me and things that I teach is like going on glimmer hunts and
Yeah.
witnessing, noticing goodness and abundance.
Yes.
Does this actually work?
Yes. So that is neuroplasticity in action. You're now forcing yourself to look at things that you don't normally look at. So you're now training your brain
Yeah.
to reinforce the neuronal pathways for seeing the joy of life, for being present to the amazing things. It's like, yeah, you're reframing stuff, but also you're actually intentionally causing neuroplasticity. So new neuronal pathways to be formed within your brain by doing that, such an exercise of looking at the glimmers, the positive things. Yeah, it's really great. Like you can do it in retrospect, looking at 2024, you could say that was a fucked year, a lot of shitty things happened to me, or you can look at it and say, wow, I grew. You know
Mm-hmm.
what? I fucking grew. I expanded as a human being, right? That's the contextual shift or the
Yeah.
reframing. But if you're doing it in present moment, right, that's even more powerful because then you're now, rather than looking at the past, you're now in the present moment, retraining your brain for what's coming. And it's like you're now, instead of looking for the triggers or the red flags in your relationships with people or with money, you're now looking for the opportunities or the possibilities for growth. Like, I personally, I think that's a more enjoyable way of living,
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
or replace the word enjoyable by something more comfortable for
No,
you.
no, I like it. I like it. I like enjoying. I like desiring and enjoying,
Or
and I'm
pleasurable,
fine,
for
pleasurable.
sure. Yeah.
Um, so what this brings to mind now is you're explaining these from a neuroplasticity kind of perspective, and I think about it from like increasing the capacity in our nervous system. How
Mhm.
are these two kind of interconnected
Mhm.
from your perspective?
Increasing the capacity for what?
So the way that I like the language I would use if we were to bring the word joy, like my
Mm.
intolerance for joy, is that
Mm.
anytime I feel joy, my nervous system's like danger. So
Mm.
it puts me out of joy. So I have low capacity for it in my nervous
Yeah.
system. Um
Yes. Okay.
from yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you now. So it's kind of like Pavlovian fear conditioning. Now you're
Mm-hmm.
just doing Pavlovian, joy conditioning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's associating a pleasurable experience. You get the dopamine rush, the serotonin, all the flood of the good molecules, endorphin, all that shit, right? I know I'm brutal with my lingo, but
Oh no, we're good. We I use this lingo in my podcast. Don't worry. Yeah.
great, great. So it's you all the goodness, all the good shit. You flood your brain with that, and you associate a certain behavior with all that. Well, that's you're now, that you're now conditioned that way.
Yeah.
You're
Mm-hmm.
now conditioned towards that, which increases your capacity to experience that. So in the same way as, fear conditioning is like, you zap a dog's foot every time it hears a tone.
Mm-hmm.
Every
Mm-hmm.
time it hears a tone, it'll freeze or,
Yeah.
think that it's going to get zapped, regardless of what if it'll get zapped. It's associating the cue, the auditory cue, with the physical pain.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're associating whatever cue, like visual, auditory, sensation, all of it, with something really great. So you're just
Yeah.
retraining your brain, really.
Retraining the brain. A very common one with listeners would be every time I make money, it goes away. Like if
Oh,
we were, yeah, because that's what would happen. How the reality was in childhood. Like anytime money
right.
would come, it just goes away. It gets spent, or somebody asks for it, or something happens,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So what happens in the reality now is that they can't save because all of a sudden there is some kind of crisis that requires the exact same amount of money.
Oh,
Right?
wow.
So would that be are we still in the same kind of situation, like conversation? Is that kind of like a Pavlovian fear from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a conditioned response. That's right.
Mhm.
Every time I get money, yeah, I have to spend it.
Mhm. Pretty much, yeah. It goes
Yeah,
away.
conditioned
Yeah.
response. That's right. The thing is conditioned responses happen on there's different whatever, there's different levels, but on a different, like a subconscious level where you don't realize you're doing it, that's conditioning for you. Yeah. Yeah, like
Got it.
our responses to something, to stress, or responses to money coming in or money going out, is a conditioned response that we do unaware of that we're doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with neuroplasticity,
Hmm.
does it change as we age?
Yes. So
Oh
there is let's
no, bye. I don't want to hear it. No, I'm kidding. Okay. Yeah, does
say yeah.
it?
Um yeah, no, yeah, yeah. Okay. So there's different things that
Okay.
impact neuroplasticity. So the capacity for your brain to rewire its cells. One of them is age.
Mhm.
So with age, neuroplasticity declines. You can look at it you can look at a neuron and see it atrophy literally in an aged individual versus a young person.
Okay.
However, environment is another thing that impacts neuroplasticity.
You
So if
did
you place
mention that in the
yourself,
beginning.
environmental enrichment is a big thing. Take a new path to work every day. You will grow new neurons. You will
reals.
cause neuroplasticity, literally. You go, hey, move countries, cause neuroplasticity.
I'm done with that for a while. But
Yeah. Or travel, right? You just traveled to Mexico. I mean, like, how you caused neuroplasticity. You've literally
did.
placed yourself in an environment with, ate all those mole and
All the
tamales and all this
mole. All the
amazing
mole. Oh my
stuff.
God, the mole. The mole created a whole loop in my brain. Now, like, I don't want to eat anything if it doesn't have mole on it. Ew.
Oh, God.
Yum.
Yeah.
But okay, so age does impact neuroplasticity, but
It does.
we
But it's
can.
reversible.
It's reversible. Okay,
Yeah,
tell us how.
and the thing with epigenetics as well, right? Everything's reversible. Like if you're DNA, if you've got dead DNA with all the genes that you want to express that aren't expressed, okay, well, alter your environment. It's all reversible. That's the beauty of what I like. What my passion is. It's actually saying, hey, you're not fixed. You're not, you're not fixed. You're not hardwired.
Mm.
You can
So,
your
okay,
brain
so
at any age.
keep life fresh.
Yeah, keep it fresh.
Keep life fresh, and you'll keep your neuroplasticity fresh. Is that right?
That's right. You keep your brain
So,
fresh. Keep your life fresh. Keep your brain fresh.
learning new languages, like all this stuff is real. It's not bullshit, huh?
No, it's not. It's actually not bullshit. I know. Well, the thing is because you hear it a lot, and like there's so many, mindset coaches, all this stuff, doctor this, I'm not going to name any names, whatever, chiropractor that. But like,
I like the
okay, I've spent
chiropractor. He's all right.
what? Yeah,
The
yeah. No, they're
chiropractor's
good.
nice.
The
He's cool.
chiropractors are good until they start to name themselves experts in neuroscience when they don't actually have a degree in the field. So I'm like, dude, let's talk. But look, not to diminish any people. I'm kidding, right? So what I'm saying is there's a lot of people saying stuff. I'm actually a behavioral neuroscientist. I've looked at this stuff. This is what happens in your brain. Your brain can rewire itself based on novel experience. It's a neuroscientific fact.
Yeah, well, Dr. Val said. Ask Dr. Val.
Hashtag ask Dr. Val.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for answering all my questions. I know I sounded like a little schoolgirl, but I am. I'm a nerd.
Not at all.
Got questions. I feel like there's a question. You know when there's like something that's like knocking on your brain and you're like, what? And it's not verbalizing. I have a question and I feel like it's there. It's doing this thing in my head. I'm like, what is it? What's the damn question? But it's not coming. So I might just have to message you and we might have a second part. I don't know.
Yeah, invite me again. I love that. It's that three energy, the numerological
the three energy.
It's the inquirer, the forever learner.
That's me. Oh my God. I have a lot of coaches, practitioners that listen to this podcast, and I know that you've got an offering that will benefit.
Yeah, I do.
Tell us about that, and where can people find you, enroll, and blah, 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 and all that stuff.
Perfect. So I do actually, I've designed a course called Neuroplasticity and Epigenetics 101 for teachers and healers specifically.
Hell yeah.
So it's specifically for you. If you're teaching, coaching, training, this is for you. We're going to go into the nitty-gritty of neuroplasticity, epigenetics, all of that in a 6-week online course with me. The next one starts on the 25th of Jan. You can find it on my website, which I'm sure you'll put in the...
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, or, reach out on Insta at love_of_brain. But yeah, I'm really here to teach the teachers, and so you guys can make... really be grounded and validated through the lens of neuroscience, because as much as I like to, kind of swim around in the ether, I'm a very 3D based kind of neuroscientist. So, So I think there's value in that. That's the value that I bring to you, and that's my intention anyway.
Beautiful, the ripple effect. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Val, and thank you everyone for listening and for being here with us. If you've got any questions, please reach out to her on her Instagram. I will link it in the show notes. And I'll love you and leave you all, and see you next time on the Unfuck Your Money Show.